Hello, I'm Jay, owner of Volunteer Audio in Oliver Springs, Tennessee. We're fixing to start a big build on a 2018 Street Glide Anniversary Edition, but I wanted to take a minute. I wanted to talk a little bit with you about the Precision Power 800 watt amp that we started offering. Now, we previously did a video where we kind of talked about it, but at that time we really hadn't put any in yet. I've done many installs now and I'm really impressed with it, and I want to tell you a few of the things I've learned about it. All right, so the amp I have is the MAA4.400. Now, they're not going to overinflate numbers like some other brands, so in the part number they put 400 because that's the RMS wattage at 4 ohms with all channels driven. This amplifier is actually an 800 watt amplifier in peak power. And believe me, I've seen the amp dyno results. It's pretty crazy. It does about 118 RMS at 4 ohm. It's doing about 176 at 2 ohm. And we saw 370 to 380 bridged to 2 channels instead of 4. But what I really like about it is all the thought that's went into the design on how it mounts, on how it wires. So, for instance, we're doing a Street Glide right now. It comes with this aluminum plate. It bolts right on top of the radio. The amplifier is going to bolt to it. This is going to give us a really sturdy way to mount it, but it's also aluminum, so it's carrying heat away from the amp to give it an extended life. It also comes with a completely plug-and-play power and ground wire. It's already pre-wired. This is how it comes. So all you have to do is route this back to the battery, connect it, it's plugged into the amplifier. Inputs and outputs of the amp are already pre-wired into a really nice harness that plugs into the stock radio, factory radio wiring plugs into the other side, and that quick we are wired into all of the speakers in the bike. So if you buy this from Volunteer Audio, which I hope you do, you're watching our video, I'm going to show you step by step how to install it here in just a few minutes. But when you buy it from us, we're going to have all the gains preset, the crossovers preset. It's truly plug and play. A lot of places will claim that term, plug and play, but when you get it, you find out, I've got to do extra work I didn't know I was going to have to do. You probably don't have a DD1 distortion detector or a CC1 crossover calibrator. We use those here on our test benches, and we connect it to each one of the radios. So whether you have a GTS radio, a GT radio, any of the factory offerings, or maybe you've got a Sony AX5000, 7000, the new SoundStream Reserve HDHU14, or even on your 98 to 13s, maybe you've got an aquatic AV radio. We've already tested this amp on all of those radios. I've already documented the exact settings, and whatever radio you have, when you let us know what it is, we're going to have everything set up so it's super easy. Your part's going to be way easier than mine because I normally have to set this up. You're going to get it, plug it in, mount it, and when you cut the key on it, it's going to be perfect every time. But I wanted to brag on Precision Power just for a minute. We normally use a Hertz 600 watt amp, and that amp is phenomenal. We've had great life out of it. It doesn't give us a lot of failure. It's super clean. But what I was really surprised was even though this is about 200 more watts, it's just as clean in sound. So people have asked me, how much better does it sound? It's really hard to put into words. I think that our systems with our Hertz amp really is a wow system. But this kind of gives it the oh wow on top of that. So hang out to the end. We'll do a walk away with this bike, let you hear what it sounds like at the end, and you can tell just how oh wow it really sounds. So if you'd purchased our Hertz option, we normally just clean this with alcohol. We put a big piece of Velcro down. We stick the amp down there. When we're using the SoundStream radio with the Precision Power amp or with the factory radio, either one, it comes with this nice aluminum plate as part of our plug and play setup. And it's pretty simple in the sense that all we do is line up the screw holes, secure it into our radio. It's got some drawings on here. It's got some arrows, says headlight. Arrows this way says gauges, so you don't try to put it on backwards. And what this aluminum is going to actually do, is going to help do, is it's going to give us another way to dissipate heat inside this fairing on this larger amplifier. So even though it's producing 800 watts, it's not going to generate a lot of heat, and so therefore it's not going to thermal protect. And this is going to help that happen. Now the amp would work like in a Road Glide, for instance. It does not use the aluminum plate. And it will be fine because it is a Class D amplifier, and in actuality, it doesn't get very hot. But I do like this mounting system. It's very nice. It looks really good. It looks better than that factory mounting system for that boom amplifier. All right, so we've got all of those bolts tight, our plates mounted. Next is to put our amp in. All right, so last we installed the aluminum plate above the radio. I want to show you just how easy and how good this amplifier looks once it's mounted to that plate. So it's very simple. We have 4 pre-threaded holes in the plate, and with this you're going to get a set of screws and the Allen head tool to install them. So let's start each one of these one at a time. Now when I started, I'm going to start each one before I tighten them up. All right, so this is really just how you're going to be installing it. So all the settings are already preset. In this case, we're installing it with the HDHU14 SoundStream reserve radio. But if you had a factory radio, we would send it out preset for your factory radio. We would also go ahead and tell you which flash to use and even rent you the tool if needed for you to be able to flash the radio correctly. But all of our crossovers have been set, all of our gains have been set specifically on this one for the HDHU14 radio. So you just put your 4 bolts in, you tighten those down, and you've got a really sturdy, really nice place for this amp to sit. And again, it's aluminum, so it's going to help carry a little bit of heat away from it. Now, it is a Class D amplifier. So in the case of, say, the Rockford amp that's used in their kits, they use an AB amp, and it has a fan that actually blows through the amp. So you've got a vent on one end, a fan on the other, but if water gets in your fairing, it's going to blow that water right into the amp. Never good for the amplifier. In this case, there are no open vents, so a lot less likely that any water were to get inside of the amplifier. All right, so let's look at this plug-and-play harnessing. I want you to see just how easy it is. So it's going to plug into our harness from our SoundStream radio. Put that in the correct way. Unlatch it. All right, so what we've just done is we fed speaker level to these 2 feeds that are just plugged into the amp. So now we have our input from our radio to here. The other side, right here, that comes out of the amplifier is run down to the factory plug, and once plugged into that original connector, is now feeding the speaker wires and the signal from the amp back into the bike. So what we're doing is we're powering up all the factory speaker locations. We didn't cut any wiring, we didn't have to add any wiring. In this case, we are going to add a backbone harness because this bike did not have one factory, so we're going to run some rear speaker wires back because it was a 2-speaker bike when it was new, but we're not having to add anything to the front pods. And everything is completely plug and play when it's done like this. So you're not going to have to figure out how to wire anything. You're simply going to plug in one set of connectors behind the radio. Now I'll show you in a little while. We'll zip tie and we'll clean all this up and we'll put it where it goes. But I want to show you just how nicely it fits, just how easy this harness is. Now, other than input and output of the amp, the only other thing we need is power, ground, and amplifier turn on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed this up through the fairing the other direction because this is much smaller than the fuse holder. We're going to do that next. We'll get it plugged in and I'll show you how that it goes and just how easy the amp turn on wire also just plugs into the radio. All right, so if you were on a road glide, there's actually a tunnel here you have to go through and it's a lot more difficult, but on a street glide, it's not hard at all. We're just going to feed the wire right up through here like the factory wires would have went. We're going to get it fished into the fairing. We're going to lay this into the backbone. We're going to go to the other side, plug it in, and then start zip tying this all the way back. This is already connected to our fuse holder, and we're just going to have to just bolt it right down to the battery. Let's go to the front and zip tie it and get it plugged in. All right, so you're just going to pull that on up and plug it into the amp. It's actually going to go with the terminals facing downward. All right, so once that's plugged in, you have this amp turn on wire. On your radio, if you're using the SoundStream radio, there's a connector that it just plugs into. That easy. If you were using a factory radio, you're going to go to one of these factory connections, like you see up here next to the gauge, and you're going to plug it in there. That's just going to turn the amp on any time that the key comes on. But if you've done a SoundStream radio, go ahead and plug it into the radio, and what that's going to allow the radio to do is actually delay the turn on and turn off of the amp, just to guarantee we don't get a turn on pop or a turn off pop from the amplifier. All right, so I took just a few minutes and I've just zip tied things in place. Normally I'll take the factory harness that you used to plug into the radio and I'll fish it up here next to the pod where your USB is for your phone. So I'll fish it in there, secure it. Also, we want to put our thumb control module, if you're doing the SoundStream radio, put it up high. Don't just let it hang low. It is not waterproof internals. I mean, it'll dry out and it'll work again, but if you hang it down low where water is going to come up through here or water is going to run down the wiring into it, it's going to give you problems that you won't have if you mount it up high. I did also run our backbone harness, which is just our rear speakers connection up here, and plugged it into the backbone connector here. It's just this 4-pin black connector. That's the same one our Boom 2 was originally tied to that went to the rear. So amplifiers fit great, wiring looks good, looks like factory. We've got our headlight connector, our fairing will go right back on. So let's move to the other side. We'll go and secure the wiring going into the backbone harness. All right, so I've got our main power wire and our backbone harness routed back here. All we're going to do is just kind of push some things over, make sure they fit down into this area here in this backbone compartment. We're just pushing them over slightly just to make enough room that they'll lay down, because our next step is we're going to go ahead and put this cover back on. Now as you do that, take your time and snap it all the way down through here and make sure none of the factory wires hang out the side, because we don't want to pinch anything, cause any future problems from any of the work we've done today. We probably pulled more wiring out of here than we put back in because of that boom setup. All right, I'm going to get that last plastic piece, the part that goes here and just kind of protects these lines when the gas tank goes back down. So everything's back in place. Make sure you don't have anything blocking your bolt holes on either side of the gas tank. We'll go and get our tank and we're going to set it back on. All right, so we're connecting our battery up back to the bike from where we unplugged it earlier, but also up to our new amp. So the black wire is going to go to the negative side, and this red wire with the big fuse holder is going to go to the positive side. Now keep your wiring facing toward the front of the bike, and that'll make it where your battery cover or battery tray, whatever you want to call this part on top that holds the ECM, will actually line up and go back in better. We're going to take this big fuse holder, we're going to put a zip tie around it, and we're going to face it toward the front of the bike and put it right here in front of the battery. All right. Got a fuse holder up here where I want it. Go ahead and put that zip tie around it. I just do that so the cover doesn't come open while it's down here in front of the battery. All right, so our amp is installed. We reconnected our battery, power, and ground. And at this point it would play. And I just wanted to make sure, you know, we showed you this video, this short clip we made on this Precision Power amp, because I'm very impressed with it. I want to show you how easy it was to mount, how easy it was and well thought out the wiring was, as well as how easy it's going to be if you buy it from Volunteer Audio, because we're going to preset those gains and everything you need to make this completely plug and play in a very, very simple solution. So I want to thank you for watching this video. Thank you for subscribing to Volunteer Audio. Please like the video. If you have questions, comment below. Reach out to us at 1-844-30-AUDIO, or you can send us an email at sales@volaudio.com. Again, all this is available at volunteeraudio.com. Just go to the motorcycle section where we have amps, speakers, full packages, radios, everything you need to upgrade to audio in your motorcycle. I hope this video encouraged you to step out, maybe do something you wouldn't normally do, save some labor hours and do it yourself. If you watched it and you said, whoa, this is way outside of my wheelhouse, come visit us. Oliver Springs, Tennessee. We're right outside of the Great Smoky Mountains. It's a great place to come and ride, and we'd enjoy meeting you. And we'll knock out the job for you. You'll see we'll do it perfect, just like we did in the video, and we'll have a great experience together. But thank you for watching. Thank you so much, and God bless.